The transgender and gender fluid issues really caught me off guard. I never, ever, ever said anything to Jacki about, this is too hard, or I really don't want you to do this, or I don't want you to be this way, because, that's an unacceptable thing to say to your kid about something that they can't control. But I had a lot of sleepless nights just about, just worrying about, are they going to be hurt going to school? Are they in physical danger because they want to wear a skirt?
In this episode of In the Shadows, Being Transgender, Jacki's mom.
Welcome to In the Shadows, where we shed light on difficult issues right here in the Ozarks. I'm Patty Lemons. When I was a little girl, I wanted desperately to be a boy. I dressed in my brother's hand-me-down clothes, I wanted to play sports, and I wanted to have a newspaper route. In the 1970s, having a paper route meant that you were a newspaper boy. There was no such thing as a newspaper girl. I even tried running around the neighborhood with no shirt on, like all the boys did, only to be laughed at and teased by all the other neighborhood kids. I prayed to God to turn me into a boy. I was definitely what my parents would call a tomboy. I would get dolls and Barbies and cooking sets for Christmas or my birthday, and I just thought those things were all kind of dumb. I wanted to be outside playing in the mud and the dirt and just having fun. And since I have curly hair, my mom would get so tired of trying to brush it out because I would be screaming the whole time. And she finally just cut it off, and she kept it short my whole life. I looked like a little boy. Now, I did eventually deliver newspapers, and people did tease me about being a paper girl, but I think I did blaze the trail for other girls, because before long, my small town had several girls with paper routes. So fast forward a few years. As I matured, I embraced my gender, I grew my hair out, and I gained an appreciation for what being a female offered. I assume that had something to do with puberty. I also realized I wasn't much of an athlete, and I turned to baton twirling and cheerleading instead. I realized that I didn't want to be a boy because I identified as the opposite sex. I wanted to be a boy because I saw opportunities that my brother had that I didn't have. So for me, it was more about feminism, which is another podcast topic entirely. So why am I even sharing this story? Well, it's because it's the closest experience for me in understanding transgender issues, to want so desperately to be the opposite sex. But I think what I'm going to learn is that it's not the same thing at all, and that there's a huge difference. That being transgender isn't just wishing you're something you're not, you're just trying to be who you really are. Or maybe I'm going to learn that my experience really isn't all that different from those who are transgender. Now, I've done a little bit of research, and I've familiarized myself with the LGBTQ glossary. But for the purposes of this podcast, we're just going to start from ground zero. We're going to define the terms and hopefully learn more about this topic. Joining me today is Brea. Brea is the mom of 3 kids, and she lives here in Springfield. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Brea, you said that your child identifies as gender fluid. Can you tell me what that means?
That means that Jacki is not one or the other. That Jacki one day might feel more feminine and other days feel more masculine. So we don't really put a gender to Jacki. Jacki is just Jacki, and we use they, them pronouns, and they just don't really identify as either gender.
Anatomically, Jacki was born
male.
Okay. First of all, tell me, how old is Jacki?
Jacki's 15.
When did you first start noticing that Jacki didn't identify as strictly male?
Jacki has always been a unique kind of child. Was never really into playing with girl toys, but never really into playing with boy toys either. Just had some interests that were were kind of different than other kids, really into cats and really into some things that we thought were just quirky, you know. And they hadn't hit puberty yet, so it wasn't really obvious because they were just a kid. But then about 2.5 years ago, they came to me and told me, you know, I don't feel like a boy. And I don't really feel like a girl either. And so it was a very difficult conversation because they didn't have the language to explain what they were feeling and who they were. And their body was very confusing to them as they were going through puberty because they didn't identify with what was on the outside.
So you're using the pronoun they.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Because Jacki's gender fluid, they don't identify as he or she. So they decided to use they, them.
And so kind of explain the evolution of that. Was it hard to start using they instead of he? And tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's hard to start using a new name. Jacki was born Jack and had the most masculine name possible, had 2 middle names that were very masculine, and decided that they wanted to go by Jacki. And that was hard just to begin with. And then I'm very much a grammarian, and I was an English major. I'm an author. I'm a writer. So using they, them as a singular was just kind of like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. But you just get used to it after a while. You know that that's what your child wants, and that's what makes them happy. And they really flourished after we used their name and their pronouns regularly. Mm-hmm. They really turned into a different kid.
So when you first came in and you said they, I said, do you have twins? So
Yeah.
do you get that a lot?
Yes. Anytime I talk about Jacki and I use they or them, someone says, well, who was with him? Or, you know, and I say, no, it's just Jacki, they, them.
Are you exhausted with that conversation, or do you welcome when people ask you that?
I actually really appreciate when people ask, because that means that they are giving me an opportunity to educate them and to tell them something that maybe they didn't know. And so I try to be very casual about it and kind of blasé about it, because I don't want people to feel uncomfortable or like they can't ask questions or that their questions are stupid. So I just, calmly say, oh, that Jacki uses they, them pronouns.
Well, and that leads into another question that I have. I think a lot of people refrain from talking about or to people who are transgender because they're afraid they're going to say something wrong, mm-hmm. like they or he or she. What advice do you have?
I would say just be upfront about that when you talk to somebody who is transgender. Just say, I really want to get to know you. I really want to learn more about this, but I might say the wrong thing, and I'm worried about saying the wrong thing, and I really don't want to hurt your feelings, and I don't want to offend you, but, I want to have this conversation.
I mentioned earlier my experience, being a young child and wishing that I was a boy. And to this day, I don't really identify as being extremely feminine. I'm certainly not masculine. Do you think that we're all just varying degrees of masculine and feminine, and that there really shouldn't be a distinction?
That's one of the first things that we learned going to an endocrinologist, a pediatrician in St. Louis, was that gender is on a spectrum. And some people are very, very, very far on the male side, and some people are very, very far on the female side. But it is a spectrum, and there are varying degrees of gender, and each person is on that spectrum somewhere.
And so going to tell us what an endocrinologist does.
Well, the endocrinologist specializes in hormones and pheromones and all the things that make you what you are gender-wise physically. And so we went to a pediatric endocrinologist up in St. Louis who kind of explained the basics to us, what was going on with Jacki, explained Jacki's options as far as, puberty blockers and hormones and different types of surgeries. And it was all very overwhelming. But it was a good opportunity. And then they also put us in touch with like counselors, which was really important at that stage.
So you went to counseling.
Mm-hmm.
You did, Jackie did, your whole family did?
Jackie, the counseling was for Jackie, but I sat in like on the first couple of sessions. But for the most part, they went in there by themselves and had counseling. And it was more like behavioral therapy, that type of thing, where they just got to talk about their feelings and what they were going through and if they had any questions and things like that. And then about 1.5 years into this whole process, Jackie started to be very anxious and have anxiety. And so we were referred to a psychiatrist at that point.
So I've read that the mental health implications are pretty strong if you don't let the person be who they need to be. At any point, did you try to say, no, you're just going through a phase? Tell me about that a little bit.
I didn't, because I knew enough. I mean, I didn't know very much at all when Jackie came out, but I knew enough to know that would be very damaging. And so I didn't say that. I did say, are you sure? I did do things like that, like any parent probably would. But we didn't say, no, you can't be this.
Tell me why that can be so damaging. What have you read?
Well, I mean, for one thing, it's hard enough to not have your thoughts and your feelings and your psychology match what's on the outside. So a lot of times, transgender children have gender dysphoria, and
Can you explain that?
And that's where they hate their bodies. They want to hurt themselves. They really have some big time problems, and they're also at a very much a higher rate for suicide. So, we obviously want to avoid all that, and you just want your kids to be happy.
When this first came up 2.5 years ago, were you shocked? Tell me about your journey. Tell me about the evolution and where you are today.
We were pretty shocked. Not because we thought, this would never happen, or because we were dismayed, or we just didn't think about that. And so it did come as a surprise. Jackie had mentioned a couple times to me that they thought that they were gay. And, that was, I feel, knowing what I know now, I feel really kind of bad about how I brushed that off. Or I would say, well, that's not something you have to think about now, because they were young, but they knew. And so I had some inklings that Jackie was struggling with their sexuality as they were going through puberty. But the transgender and genderfluid issues really caught me off guard. And I never, ever, ever said anything to Jackie about, this is too hard, or I really don't want you to do this, or I don't want you to be this way, because, that's an unacceptable thing to say to your kid about something that they can't control. But I had a lot of sleepless nights just about, just worrying about, are they going to be hurt going to school? Are they in physical danger because they want to wear a skirt? Things like that. And because you love your kid unconditionally, that's not ever in question. But I did, worry about logistical things like, how's our family going to react? What are holidays going to be like? What's it going to be like at church? What's going to happen at school? And things like that you feel like you have a little bit more control over, but you don't. But I just thought, this is just such a hard road.
How has that been with your family?
Our family and friends are really great. I think that there's still a lot of, we love you no matter what. We don't agree with it, maybe. But we love you anyway. So it's kind of like love the sinner, hate the sin.
Right.
I personally don't believe that it's a sin to be born the way that you are. So I don't have that kind of, conflict within myself. But that has been a little bit difficult, to know that I can't control how other people feel and what they believe, and that they don't believe the same that I do about it. But they've been nothing but loving.
And I've heard that perspective because I've asked people, and they said kind of the same thing that you did, which was a little surprising to me. So let's dive into the opinions of whether this is a choice or whether you're born that way. I know I didn't share that with you, ahead of time that I was going to ask that, but tell me about the choices, because as one friend said, who would choose a life that was going to be difficult?
Mm-hmm.
So fill me in.
I didn't choose to be female. I didn't choose to be the amount of feminine that I am. I just am. I didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm heterosexual or I'm cisgendered. It just was. And I've just always known it somewhere deep inside me. And these kids and these people, they do too. They just know it. It's just who they are.
Right. How did the endocrinologist explain it to you as far as that goes?
They explained about the spectrum, and that that our brains and our bodies and just know who we are, and that medicine and science, we're just catching up and figuring out how this works, and isolating what the genes are and what it is in our DNA that makes us that. And so it is evolving, and I think that's hard too, because there's so much uncertainty around it. You can't just say, well, hey, look at this study, because then someone else can show you two studies that say the opposite. And so it's very difficult, especially nowadays with, so many questionable sources floating around. It's really hard with the uncertainty.
Do you feel like transgender males, as in a female who identifies as a male,
Mm-hmm.
have it a little easier than transgender females?
I do. Yeah. Maybe just by the sheer fact that men have it easier in our society. I mean, it's okay for girls to be tomboys. It's okay for women to be a little bit more masculine. But it's, femininity is not something that's very prized in our society. And I think that, especially with toxic masculinity and things like that, there's a lot of people who think, there has to be something wrong with you psychologically to want to be a female if you were born male. And that's just not how it works. I mean, it's not about what you want. It's about who you are.
Has Jacki experienced any type of bullying or repercussions from any of this?
Yes, of course. I mean, we live in a very conservative area, and Jacki is, as Jacki does not shy away from being who they are. And so, when Jacki said, I want to wear skirts to school, I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if we can do this. I don't know if I can handle this. I can't send you to school wondering if you're going to be beat up from what you're wearing, because up until then, they had gone to school with a lot of these kids since kindergarten, and they knew Jacki as a boy. And so I thought, no, 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 no. And I really resisted that. But then I thought, I can't control everything. And it's going to make them happy. And this is what they want to do. And it doesn't hurt anybody. So I did talk to the school. They were in middle school at the time. And so I talked to the school and I talked to the administrators at the school. And we came up with plans for the inevitable. If somebody harasses you, what do you do? Where do you go? Who do you talk to? And so we did have a few instances where that happened, and the administration took care of it right away.
Had the administration, I guess, dealt with this before?
No. So that was a really interesting experience, too, because I thought, well, this is something obviously that they've dealt with before, so they'll have plans in place or whatever. And I went in there to talk to them, and they were looking to me for all the answers. Like, what should we do? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is all so new to me too. I don't know. I thought that you guys would know. So we kind of learned together, what needed to be done.
But they were open-minded and supportive?
Very, very.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Jacki wears skirts to school now?
They do.
And
yeah, I mean, they're in high school now. And high schoolers, on the one hand, are more mature. And on the other hand, a little bit meaner and a little bit more open with their language. So they've been harassed in the hallways. But they say, Mom, it doesn't matter to me. I don't care what they say. And so they just have a really great attitude. They have a much better attitude than I would, at their age. I really cared about what people thought. And they just say, it doesn't bother me that much.
Tell me about their social life.
Jacki has a boyfriend who is great. We love Owen. They are going to their first high school dance next week, wearing a dress. And so that's going to be pretty exciting. They have friends, and they are a member of the Gay Straight Alliance at Parkview, and they seem to be thriving.
That's great.
Yeah.
We've all heard about the LGBTQ community. Can you tell me what that stands for, and why is being transgender lumped into that acronym? And is there a correlation between being transgender and being gay, or are they separate?
They're separate, just like your gender is separate from your sex, your anatomical sex. LGBTQ is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. And then the Q, sometimes I see it meaning queer, and sometimes I see it meaning questioning. So, and then there's usually a plus at the end for anything that doesn't fall under that acronym. So, so it gets really complicated. Like, you need a flow chart sometimes to figure out where sexuality and gender and sex kind of intersect. So Jacki is gender fluid. That's what their gender is. They are anatomically male, so that's what their sex is. And they are attracted to males, so they are gay. So you kind of have to break it down like that. But it's also individual as well. So if Jacki were anatomically male, but transgender female, so identifying and expressing as female, and attracted to males, then they would consider themselves straight.
Right.
So
for each person, it could be a different acronym.
Right.
Okay.
And it could be, it could be a different combination of traits. So just like you can have a combination of red hair and blue eyes and curly hair and red hair and green eyes or whatever, it's just a combination of traits.
So we live in the Midwest. What advice do you have to parents who are experiencing some similar circumstances? It's probably a little bit harder here than if we lived on the coast or New York or something. What do you say to those parents?
I say, first of all, you really have to go with what your kid needs. That's the most important thing, is what is going to make them the healthiest, happiest person. Second is to have a support network and do counseling. Counseling is really important. When Jacki first came out, it felt like, even though I know logically that this is not how it was, it felt like there was a death a little bit. Like the little boy that I gave birth to was no longer that person. And, after 13 years, that's surreal. So it was like I was learning who this kid was all over again. And so I think that counseling is really, really important. I've had a lot of luck with Facebook groups. That's one great thing about Facebook, is that you can connect to people all over the world who have their own perspectives and can really cheer you on and give you pep talks and, tell you that it gets better, But I think mostly here in the Midwest, you really just have to stop caring what other people are going to think and what other people are going to say, because that's not what's important.
So I think that there's a big group of people, myself included, who want to understand, who want to say the right things, who don't want to offend. I think people are really scared of offending people. What are the things that we need to steer clear from? I mean, is saying queer bad? Is drag bad? All those words that can bring about negative connotations. What should we or is it like gay people can call people gay, but heterosexual people cannot? Can you kind of fill me in on that?
I think that it's very personal. It's going to vary by person. So you just have to kind of just, like I said, be upfront with people right away and just say, listen, I might not know all the right lingo. I might not know all the right terms, but I still want to be your friend. I still want to get to know you. I still want to learn about this. So please, please, please just correct me if I'm wrong, and know that that's not my intention. I think intent is so important. And so, when people use the label queer, that's been kind of retaken from the lexicon of slurs. Same with gay, same with...
what do you mean by retaken?
Like they've reclaimed it. It used to be a slur, like, oh, you're queer, oh, you're gay. And now it's like, I'm going to take that back. Yeah, I am queer. Yeah, I am gay, whatever, and I'm proud of it. So I think that's one thing that the gay community or the LGBTQ community has done a really great job of just, saying, you're not going to hurt us with words. And we'll take all that back and we'll use it and we'll claim it for ourselves. And I think that really shows what the LGBT community is all about.
Since you are a wordsmith,
Sort of.
Transgender is an adjective. What noun is used? As I was writing, I was kind of struggling with that. Do you say a transgender person? Do you say a person who is transgender? Or is there a noun that you use? How do you...
Typically, it's transgender person, or transgender kid, like kiddo or whatever. If you know what their gender expression is, if they're obviously expressing as female, you can call them a transgender female or a transgender woman. I think woman is probably more preferred. Female's kind of I don't know, scientific.
Right. I don't call you a
Or
female.
clinical.
I call you a woman. Yeah.
And it's kind of what we use to describe animals,
Right.
female or male. But transgender woman, transgender man. But yeah, just person.
So, are you an expert on the topic now?
No. I probably never will be. It's so complicated, and it's so, and our own, even being a cisgender.
Explain cisgender.
Cisgender is just cis is I think it derives from the Latin. I know I have a Latin teacher friend who's probably like, duh, but it means same. So I'm the same gender as my anatomy. Yeah. So that's what cis is. But so even just being a cisgender woman, and a heterosexual woman is complicated sometimes. So imagine when those traits don't line up the way that society tells us they should. That gets pretty complicated.
What does the future hold for Jacki?
That's a big question mark. I mean, a lot depends on what happens with laws, what happens with our society, what happens with just norms in society. And that's that uncertainty is scary. I'd be lying if I told you that I don't worry and that I'm not afraid for Jacki. I am every day, especially living where we live. But I think it's a lot easier than it used to be, and that a lot of people have given some blood, sweat, and tears to make it that way for Jacki and for kids like Jacki. So we're appreciative of that. We can't control how people think and what they believe, but we can get out there and be activists and make sure that the laws are there to protect people, all humans, no matter how they identify. And that's what I hold on to. It's just that, people are going to think and say and do and believe what they believe. But the laws, as long as we are really vigilant about keeping laws in place to protect people, then, that's a great start.
Right. And I like what you said about how, first and foremost, you want Jacki to be safe and healthy and happy. I think about my own kids and the love that I have for my kids and how strong that is. And no matter what, that love is going to be there. And if they came to me with news, I would know that it was a journey, but it wouldn't change how I felt, and that happiness is ultimately what I want. What would you say to encourage other parents?
You know what the priority is as a parent. You know what's most important, and you know what else is just small stuff that you shouldn't sweat. And just focus on the high level stuff. Is my kid happy? Is my kid healthy? Does my kid know that I love them every single day? And everything else I know that sounds trite, and a lot of times everything else doesn't just fall into place because things go wrong. But if you're always focusing on those things, is my kid happy, healthy, and does he or she or do they know that I love them? You can get through a lot just by focusing on that, and then realizing that everything else is kind of secondary.
I'm not sure how to ask this, and just tell me you're not going to answer
just
it.
Say it.
Is this the path you would have chosen for Jacki?
No. And I think that any parent who's honestly asked that, who is straight and cisgendered and doesn't know that experience firsthand, would say no. People will correct me if I'm wrong. I know they will. But it's just not easy. We want our kids' lives to be easy. We want their road to be smooth. And it's not. It's not an easy, there's nothing easy about it. There's nothing uncomplicated about it. And knowing what we know as adults about human nature, it's scary. But at the same time, I think of any of my kids, if somebody said one of your kids is going to have this more difficult life, I would know that Jacki was the one who could do it. So, God knows who these special people are that he can entrust with this journey. And Jacki is one of those people.
Tell me about the conversations you've had with Jacki regarding what we just talked about.
When Jacki first came out, the conversations were difficult. I didn't know what language to use. I didn't know what words to use. It was a lot of "we love you no matter what," which makes it sound like, they came to us and said, "I'm a serial killer," and they didn't. Obviously, it's nothing like that. So, but you use a lot of terms like that, and it's very like it was kind of overkill. We really just wanted to make sure that they knew that this changes nothing about how we feel about you. We think you're amazing. We think you're, And so as time has gone on, and they faced, the inevitable things that we thought that they would face, the bullying at school, we just make sure that they know. And we tell them, you handled that correctly. And we're really proud of you. And you're awesome. And I mean, we are not shy about verbalizing with any of our kids, how we feel about them. And it's really no different with Jacki. It's just how we are in our family. We're very demonstrative. But yeah, there is another level to it when you're trying to encourage somebody just to be who they are every day.
Tell me about your family.
My husband and I, we've been together since high school. So, and we have an older son who's adult, out of the house, and engaged to be married. And we have a granddaughter, and she's adorable. And we have Jacki, who's 15. And then we have our youngest son, Peyton, who is 9, and he's a 3rd grader, and he's kooky, and we love him to death. I have a large extended family, and so does my husband. So there's a lot of people on both sides of our family, and they've all just been very loving, and they don't get it right all the time, but we're patient with them, and we practice what we like to call radical patience. And just, you love them no matter what they say. That they're trying, what the intent is, and you just,
And your husband, how did he handle it?
Oh, my husband, he's really easygoing. He's an easygoing guy. And he took it better than I did. I mean, he was worried, like I was. But, just like, oh, okay. Well, what do we need to do next? What's the next step? And he's just been there the whole time. He's our rock.
I've heard a lot of negative comments as far as they don't want younger people experiencing this and seeing it and feeling like they have a choice as well, that it's a bad influence. What do you say to those people?
I say because it's not a choice, the more that kids can be around people who are being authentic and being who they were born to be, the better. Because then if those kids are feeling that, and if those kids are saying, man, my insides don't match my outsides, they don't feel like a freak. They know that is just one way to be. And I think the more that you expose kids to things like that, the healthier they are and the better off they will be mentally, because they know that no matter how they are and how they were put together, it's the way God meant them to be.
You mentioned God.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me the religious implications, because I've also heard comments regarding that as well.
You know, we're Lutheran. I'll probably die Lutheran, but we are not very active in church right now. The Lutheran Church, with a capital C, is very clear about where it stands. It's that being gay is a sin. So LGBTQ, that whole umbrella, is a sin. Obviously, that's not what I believe. I don't believe my kid was born a sin. That's just patently ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. So the theology and the doctrine of the church, with a capital C, the Christian church, not just the Lutheran church, but the Christian church, for the most part, except a few denominations, is counter to what we believe on this issue. So that makes it hard for us to participate in an organization that feels that way about our child. We've had nothing but love and support from our church family, our physical church family here in Springfield. They've been wonderful. But when you know that the higher ups and the overall organization feels the way it does about your kid, I can't give money to that. I can't, it makes it very complicated as far as how I interact with that organization. So that's been difficult, because we love our church family, and we don't want to, it sounds kind of conceited to say it this way, we don't want to punish them for the way that an organization feels. But at the same time, they are part of that organization. And so it's hard to separate those. So we feel like we love them still. They're still our brothers and sisters. But we have really separated a lot from the church, from organized religion. Still love them as people. But yeah, so that's difficult.
Do you think you'll seek another church at some point, or, long term, what does that mean?
There are other denominations that are inclusive and affirming, and we've had lots of invitations from people of those denominations. Hey, come to our church, But it is hard, because they're not our church family. I feel like if I were to join another church or to join another denomination, I would really be divorcing myself from them. And I'm just not ready for that yet.
What do you say to people who are digging their heels in about their beliefs and aren't accepting of your family?
I say you can believe what you want to believe, but that doesn't make it true. And if you're a person who claims to love people and be a good person, good people don't put conditions on love. And good people don't treat some humans as second-class citizens just because they don't understand.
And do you have love for those people who don't understand?
I do. A very complicated love. I feel like you don't drive out hate with hate. So love is really the only option. But at the same time, it's frustrating and it's painful as a parent to see that. And it makes me angry. But I do. I still love anyone who doesn't understand. I know a lot of people who don't. It doesn't change my love for them, but it does make it harder for me to like them.
One of my friends told me it's never hurt any of us to learn something new. What would you say to those of us who are curious? Is it none of our business? I hope you know that where I'm coming from is sincere, and I just want to be educated, and I want to help educate other people. What do you say?
I think that I come from a place of privilege where that's concerned, because I am straight, I am cisgender. It doesn't hurt me to tell people. And that's part of my responsibility in that privilege, is to be one of the people who helps other cisgender straight people understand. Because we shouldn't make transgender people teach us what being transgender is about. That's not their responsibility. Our responsibility is to learn it. And some of that is from talking to people, but that shouldn't be our primary way of learning. We should learn by researching, there's so much material out there. You can watch films, you can listen to podcasts, you can, read forever and ever. And find out about it. National Geographic did a whole thing about it that was amazing. Just like anything, it's not fair to ask an African American to tell you everything about what it's like to be a Black person. It's not really fair to ask transgender people to keep explaining themselves over and over again. So that's why I feel like that's my responsibility.
So do you feel like when I do interview somebody who's transgender, am I going to have a little more of a difficult time? You've been really easy to talk to. And I've had professionals reach out to talk to me as well. Do you think the situation's going to be a little different?
I think that maybe you will feel more nervous and you'll be worried about screwing up. But I think that you'll find that, like Jacki, I can't speak for all transgender people, obviously. Jacki just wants to be understood. So Jacki likes to talk about what it means to be Jacki. Now, they're 15, and they haven't had to explain it over decades of their life. But I think that they appreciate any time someone tries to understand and comes from a place of love.
So let's just wrap it up by telling us a little bit about Jacki. What kind of a person?
Jacki is, everyone who meets Jacki falls in love with Jacki. They're an old soul. The minute I held them in my arms when they were born, I thought, this is the oldest baby I've ever seen in my life. He was just a little old man, and they've always kind of been like that, real serious, but at the same time, kind of goofy. And Jacki loves anything that's 80s, loves it. And they're constantly quizzing me on 80s music and 80s styles and 80s everything, and they can't believe I know all this stuff, because I'm just dumb mom. But I'm like, I lived it. And they love music, they love fashion, and they're very passionate and artistic, and just one of those people that when you meet them, you never forget them. Very, very, very unique person.
You have pride talking about Jacki?
Yeah. I'm very proud of Jacki. Jacki has really embraced who they are. And I think that that's something that a lot of people go their whole lives and never learn how to do. And for somebody so young to have already figured that out is just incredible.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Shadows. We're only one episode in, and I've already learned so much. I hope you have too. Please join us next time for Allie's story.
And so when I talk to people about stuff, the things I say are, I have two out of bounds, questions, one of which is, what's in your pants, surgery, questions like that. And the other question is, what was your old name? Because I will not. And I think one of the most striking and unexpected ways that my life is different from, say, you or a lot of other people out there is finding that El Dorado, is finding that end zone, that place of, this is what I have been looking for, of finding something that makes you so extraordinarily happy that it changes your life.
If you have questions you would like for me to ask our future guests, please contact me at intheshadowspod.com, or you can send me a message to our In the Shadows Facebook page. Also, if you're interested in sharing your story, you can contact me there as well. In the spirit of the mental health theme that I've kept going throughout this project, I would like to encourage you to continue to be kind to everyone, whether you agree or disagree with my guests. My fundamental message is to open your hearts to learn, be kind, and to love.